Hello, ladies and gentlemen. And so this is really people are avid readers. Some are, and some are really busy in the work week and they don't have a lot of time to really see what is what. But this is pretty serious. People who live in Los Angeles County, the typhus outbreak in Los Angeles County has surpassed 100 patients. And so squalid conditions in the city's Skid Row area have created a typhus zone. So it's sort of, in a way, labeled now where cases have cropped up and it is spreading. It is really out of control. So it's gotten to the point where in all of these cities, if they have this problem, it is really not getting any better. And so I've been saying this, there's a huge issue with homelessness. And so I'm going to also go into another article shortly after this one. But the homeless problem is not over with yet. And I don't think it will be over. It only gets worse. And so I'm going to probably include my input in terms of, some of the things that have been happening. You know, it just seems like it doesn't get any better. It's almost like they try to put a band-aid on the situation, but it doesn't really hold up too well. And so it's a sad situation. So you're going to see on this article what I see every day. It actually is a lot worse than what they're showing, but the typhus outbreak in Los Angeles County surpasses 100 people. A typhus zone where cases have cropped up, new cases. And so this is just but one person that I see plenty of tents, people that are just lying wherever they can lie. They're all over the place, all over the ground. So a homeless person sleeps on the street in Skid Row, downtown Los Angeles. This was October 16, 2018. This is by an Andrew Blackstein and Dennis Romero. So the number of patients in Los Angeles typhus outbreak has surpassed 100, according to the figures compiled by NBC News. I believe it's a lot more than just 100. I believe it says it surpassed 100, so it's a whole lot more than that. So Los Angeles County Department of Public Health on Tuesday said that there were 72 cases in its jurisdiction, which does not include the cities. So it's admitting that there are other cities, which is Long Beach, Pasadena, which have their own health bureaucracies. So the latest figures for Los Angeles, but Long Beach and Pasadena, obtained by NBC News 15 and 20, respectively. I believe it would be a lot more than that. And that's just only the numbers that they're getting. Um, bring LA County's total to 107 new typhus patients in 2018. So more than half of what the entire nation usually observes in an entire year. So it's spreading, um, and it's really sad because I'm going to go into the rest of this article. So according to the California Department of Public Health, in the 2000s, the number of patients diagnosed with typhus in Los Angeles County did not exceed 20 cases per year. And so this was in the early 2000s. According to a county report, observers say that there's a correlation between the rise of typhus and the area's 47% increase in homelessness. Exactly, because it seems like there's new homeless people every week. And so in the homelessness that has been happening since 2012. So Emily Holman, infectious disease coordinator for the Long Beach Department of Health and Human Services, said via email that there are additional cases in that city of 469,450. So there were still under investigation. Okay, that they're still under investigation about this. So I'm not seeing the level of response that matches the emergency that this is. And so that's what people are concerned about, that know that this is going on. So the city of Pasadena said in a statement October 5th that the outbreak had reached epidemic levels. So, however, since then, the city has noted no. So this is someone else that is sleeping out, just out and about. And so a homeless person sleeps beside a tree on just Skid Row. Skid Row has a large percentage of homeless population because they've kind of reserved that area, I believe, sort of pushed all of the homeless people away from the areas where they have the high rises, but the people still come back up that way because they're, you know, looking for money, for change, or they're just kind of like, you're here. Sometimes you'll see tents and they're under freeway underpass. They clean them up and then they make them leave and then they come back a week later or less than that. So the year-to-date typhus number provided by the state of California for Los Angeles County was 98. A spokesman for the California Department of Public Health emphasized Tuesday that this is dependent on reporting from local jurisdictions. So the department also said that no typhus deaths have been registered in 2018. And so this is the more important part we're getting to. So nearly 1 in 10 area cases, according to the county's health department figures, was centered downtown, where squalid conditions in the Skid Row neighborhood, including piles of trash and conspicuous rats, have been blamed for exacerbating the outbreak because the rodents travel and they also carry these fleas. And so the office of Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti said that earlier in October that it has dedicated an additional 300,000 to fortify trash pickup, sidewalk washing, and street cleaning in an area of downtown it labeled the typhus zone. We're deploying every available resource to help control and stop this outbreak. Alex Commissar, spokesman for Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, said at the time. So here you see related news. Typhus zones, rats, trash infest Los Angeles, Skid Row, fueling the disease. Okay, and so you see this here. And so eventually I will go back to it. And so it is really sad. It's always been that way. I've seen it just seems like it's gotten worse. I'll say that, and you can see it. I'll try to see if I can come back through there, but you can see where there's tents and there's just people just laying out everywhere in the street, and it's scary. Some people don't even want to drive down those streets because some of the people sometimes they have mental issues and sometimes they are very violent, and you feel afraid to even drive. Nobody parks along there. They might as well not even have meter poles like where you pay for parking, because nobody parks along there because it's so dangerous. So Estella Lopez, executive director of the Central City East Association, a business improvement district that overlaps with Skid Row, said that she was informed by the city officials that rat and flea eradication efforts, including spreading bug powder in the area, would begin in days to come. So it's that bad. So usually they don't go through these steps, but because it has gotten so bad and out of control, they're doing this now, and it's probably going to cost money, as you see. So still, she said, I'm not seeing the level of response that matches the emergency that this is. And so that's where that statement came from. A typhus infection can cause, these are the symptoms: headache, high fever, and in rare cases, meningitis and even death. According to the LA County Health Department website, it's contracted when the feces from infected fleas are rubbed into cuts and scrapes in the skin, or rubbed into the eyes even. And so the LA County Homeless Service Authority counts 2,145 people living outdoors in the Skid Row neighborhood. And so it's like people all over the place. I've driven down there, and anybody that has driven down there, you can see for yourself. It's like that even at night, and you don't want to go down there at night because they might rob you, you might get mugged or hurt or killed even. So the nonprofit research organization Economic Roundtable estimates 102,955 homeless people call LA County home. And so that, you see those people, they're walking the street. Sometimes some people are on drugs, or they're looking for drugs, or looking for alcohol. They use it not to have fun with, it's to stay warm because it's cold when there's the winter months. And then, people are very desperate. Sometimes they'll come along and, come up to your car and ask if they can wash the windows. Some people think they're helping, but it can be dangerous because some people are violent, and they you'll go to open your wallet and then they'll snatch your wallet, or they'll hit you upside the head or something like that. So it can be very risky. So Andy Bales, CEO of the Union Rescue Mission, which has nearly 1,400 beds for the displaced, said the city and the county governments can only do so much to alleviate a homeless problem that has sparked outbreaks of hepatitis A and also gang violence over the Skid Row drug trade. So I'm not saying the drugs to be mean. It is an issue with drugs. The gangs kind of look to some of these people as targets, so they can do the drug activity. So there's a lot of drug activity down there as well. And so the reason why people would rob you is because they're looking for money for their drug habits, because there are some people who can't be in the shelter if they're not clean from whatever their substance abuse. So a lot of times they choose to be out there because it's easier to do the drugs and not be told you can't do the drugs inside of like shelters have rules. So that's why some people choose to be out there. It's sad, but it's the drugs that is causing some of it. Also, mental illness, that's another issue. There's issues with just not having enough money. Maybe a person had a tragedy and they lost their place of employment, and they end up and they can't afford to stay somewhere. They stay in a couple of shelters, and there's different types of homelessness. Stay with a couple of friends, and then they end up in an RV. You have some people, we have some issues where some people are in RVs. They do have a place to shelter, but it's still, they're homeless. And then you have people in and out of hotels and motels, but that's a step up from just being completely on the street. And so some people are just on the street and they become conditioned to that lifestyle. and it's hard to get off of the street for some people. And then there's long waiting list to get in housing. And then what's so sad, additionally, is that there's these high rises, and a lot of the units are empty because they want 3 or 4 or 5 grand or 6 grand for, this is somebody that has like maybe makes corporate income, and a lot of those people are not making that kind of money. And then some of the shelters are very full already. And so they're swamped with people. And they take first priority people like maybe families and then people with kids and things like that, because they don't want them to be on the street. So some of the people that you do see might be, so heavily addicted to drugs or mentally ill, or they just sometimes they just would, they choose to be out on the street in their tent or whatever. So it goes on to say that he is calling on the federal government and the U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is called FEMA, to help out in this issue. So it's a FEMA like disaster, and it needs to be treated as such, he said. So this is was written by an Andrew Blackstein. He's an investigative reporter for NBC News. And so I thought this was an important type of thing. I'm going to try to see if I can click on this. It might enlarge it, where it additionally will show you the typhus zone is what it is called. And so it has rats and trash infest LA, which is Los Angeles, Skid Row, fueling the disease. People illegally dumping, food being discarded, accumulation of blankets and pillows and human waste are attracting the rats, a business advocate has said. So here it is. This is what I've seen. It is really bad. And so I want you to see this is what I have seen. This is a true picture. And so it's really sad. And so rats are likely contributing to the typhus outbreak on Los Angeles Skid Row. Experts say prompting the city and county to take steps to reduce the spread of the disease. Okay, so it is out of control. So October 14, 2018, this photo was taken. I'm going to go back up here. This is really a vivid picture of what is going on in Los Angeles. And it's not just in Los Angeles. I've seen it. I've seen it along the freeways when you're heading to Pasadena. I've seen it like in areas, I believe it was by the Angel Stadium. There was a place they were doing cleanup there, and it was just like Tent City is what they called it. It was in like a basin area. And then Long Beach is having a problem with the typhus outbreak as well. And so there's some other areas that this disease is spreading rapidly to. And so it's becoming a really big problem. So this is by Dennis Romero and Andrew Blackstein as well. Los Angeles wholesale fish distributors, produce warehouses, and homeless encampments line Ceres Avenue downtown, creating perfect conditions for rats. So uneaten food is dumped on the streets, and a salad platter was recently splattered on the asphalt, and discarded clothing piles up only to be swirled into rats' nest. So it's like a rat haven, this trash, and rats enjoy this type of litter. And I have seen piles in different parts of downtown Los Angeles. So those rats, experts say, are likely contributing to the growing number of typhus infections cropping up on the Skid Row area and other parts of the region. The disease is spread by fleas, which is carried by rats and possums and pets. So you have a constant activity that serves as a breeding ground for the rats. Estela Lopez executive director of the Central City East Association of Business Improvement District that overlaps Skid Row. So she has said this. So Los Angeles County typhus outbreak, which began in the summer, has expanded to as many as 92 cases, including 20 in Pasadena and a possible 18 in Long Beach, where 5 were still under investigation by the Long Beach Department of Health and Human Services. So the average number of typhus cases the county sees in a year is about 60, which in itself has doubled in recent years, according to the LA County Health Department. So the city officials recently have declared downtown Skid Row roughly 54 square blocks where more than 4,000 homeless congregate a typhus zone. So it is now called the typhus zone. Typhus reaches epidemic levels in parts of the Los Angeles area. So it is out of control. So which increased rat density diseases like with increased rat density and diseases like typhus are very likely to occur, said Dr. Lee W. Riley, an infectious disease researcher at the University of California, Berkeley. A typhus infection can cause high fever, headaches, chills, and in rare cases, meningitis, even death. It's contracted when the feces from the infected fleas are rubbed into cuts, scrapes, and in the skin or rubbed in the eyes. That is according to the county health department saying this on its website. So we're deploying every available resource to help control the stop of this outbreak, said Alex Commissar, spokesman for the Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti. So the city and county have formed the dedicated task force and we're putting new funding into intensifying cleanups in the affected areas so that we can keep the streets and sidewalks safe for everyone. So these are the tents, more of the tents. But I see a whole lot more tents than that. So homeless since August the 2016, Tina Marie Van Tassil holds a can of beer while standing in front of her tent near Skid Row in downtown LA on June 20, 2017. Okay, so county health officials declined to comment. So downtown rat problem was exposed last week. So there are huge rats all over the downtown area, and they, are pretty much that is their home, and with all of the trash and all of the litter and all of the feces and homelessness, it's a haven, and people doing a lot of illegal dumping. It's a haven for rats to thrive, and anything else, especially the typhus. And so downtown rat problem was exposed last week by NBC News LA affiliate KNBC, which documented piles of uncollected trash around Sarris Avenue on Skid Row. So the station reported that despite 2,200 calls made to the city helpline in the last 2 years by people requesting trash pickup in the area, the city responded to less than half the complaints. So it's sanitation. Eric Garcetti called disgusting, and it's unacceptable. And so the Los Angeles County supervisors, Catherine Barger and Janice Hahn, are expected to introduce a motion Tuesday that would create the Housing for Public Health program, a coordinated effort to reduce the spread of typhus and other diseases on Skid Row by cleaning housing and educating the homeless. So Barger and Hahn introduced a motion last week to seek flea collar donations that can be distributed to the homeless individuals that have pets, because some of the homeless people have dogs, or they may have a cat, or most times I see them with dogs. And so those dogs sometimes the hair is matted, or they're not clean, or they're out there exposed to where these fleas are, and they also are carriers. Lopez of the Central City East Association said illegal dumping, food being discarded, accumulation of blankets and pillows, and human waste is creating a third world condition. So that's really sad. And this is in a city that's supposed to be plentiful and that has lots of resources, but it is being called the typhus zone in some streets and a third world condition. So at the Midnight Mission, which serves 3 meals a day to as many as 1,000 people, the scene outside its doors can be very chaotic, and that is what I've been saying. I'm out here. I know what this looks like. I've driven past it plenty of times, and it's very sad. It's gotten only worse. Each week it doesn't seem to get any better. So if you walk out of the building, you're faced with the threat of, it's basically saying all the things that I've said before I'm even reading it. So if you walk out of our building, you're faced with the threat of assault, drug dealing, trash everywhere. And Georgia Berkovic, the nonprofit director of public affairs, has said this. So Jerry Jones, I've seen it too. It's sad. So what they tell you on the news, they only tell you what they think you want to hear, but they're not really exposing what's really going on. And this article is pretty much pinpointing more detail. So there's definitely an abundance of rats and roaches and horrible condition there. And so it goes on to say that Jerry Jones, public policy director of the Inner City Law Center, called the squalid and inhumanity on the streets shocking and surreal. And so there's definitely an abundance of rats and roaches in horrible conditions, he said. So investigation continues in the mystery. That's something totally unrelated. So it goes on to say that social service providers say the county and the city could reduce human waste by installing more 24-hour public bathrooms in an area that has only about 2. So they also blame charities for handing out the food, and that happens a lot. A lot of people want to help homeless, so they think by giving them food and handing them out food trays, and sometimes they give them like little baggies or lunch baggies or boxes, little lunch boxes. And what ends up happening is that ends up on the ground. Food is half eaten. And then it adds to the piles of trash. So they also blame charities for handing out food and clothing that end up being dumped on the spot, attracting the rats. And so on Saturday, nearly a dozen people from the local church handed out food on Ceres Ave, which KNBC identified as hot spots for rats. So volunteer Karina Dominguez Gonzalez said that the non-denominational group was careful to hand out only peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and paper bags to those who asked for it. And so she had said that she has seen organizations put boxes of food on the sidewalk. I've seen that too, where they'll hand out boxes with food in it because they're trying to help people, but those boxes end up all on the street. And clothes, sometimes some people wear them, some people don't even wear them. They wear them a little bit and then they dump them because they don't have any way of washing the clothing. And so they just take it off wherever it is that they are, and then they leave it in the street, and it litters the street. So like people are going to rush like animals. So that's what she was saying. She said that she's seen organization put food boxes out on the street like people are going to rush like animals. And so this is a video about Craig Melvin reports on the nation's growing homeless epidemic. And this is really sad. So that's why I'm going into this, because I believe these articles are a little bit more intense and in depth in what the seriousness of this problem is. People go about their merry way, and some people are living close to nothing or paycheck to paycheck, could wind up in this predicament, or in a predicament similar. And so I think these things are very like hard hitting uh, and heavy pills to swallow. But it goes on to say that in response to the rats, the trash, the typhus, Garcetti recently dedicated another 300,000 to fortify trash pickup, sidewalk washing, and street cleaning in the Skid Row neighborhood that is home to an estimated 2,145 people living outdoors. So each street in the area is visited by a cleanup crew once every 2 weeks under a 6-year-old Operation Healthy Streets initiative. So according to Eric Garcetti's office, that's the initiative that they put forward. So, but because of the typhus outbreak, the cleanups have been expanded now from the 9-block area to 25 blocks now. So that just gives you a number. It's the homeless thing is growing. It's not going away. It's getting worse. And with the rising cost of rents and housing for just regular families and families being pushed out of places they've always known and they don't know anywhere else or any way out, some of them unfortunately end up in these predicaments. But because of the typhus outbreak, the cleanups have been expanded from 9 blocks to 25 blocks. So officials have said this. Nonetheless, the city efforts are limited by litigation. After being sued by homeless plaintiffs over the LA Police Department sidewalk sweeps, officials agreed in 2007 to not remove people from sidewalks between 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning. So, and to not trash a limited amount of their personal belongings, because that's what they were doing pretty much. They were policing the homeless people and telling them that they were going to put them in jail. They were going to give them a ticket or a fine, and then they would jail them if they didn't move their belongings. So, some people were harassed by the police, so they were doing sweeps. And I would see some of this happen. It was really sad. In 2012, the rat's nest, human waste, and hypodermic needles got so bad on Skid Row that the county health officials had cited the city for health code violations and filthy conditions that the county later said contributed to the hepatitis outbreak. And so you have to even be careful just walking. You can't even really walk down there. I will tell you one quick story. There's a guy who's supposed to be helping at one of the shelters in the Skid Row vicinity. And so he said that when he first started, he was walking, he had all his limbs, but because of him just walking in that on the sidewalks out there, something had got into his shoes. And it was some kind of fungus or some germ or whatever. But whatever it was so bad that he was doing this walking in that area and going to work down there. And he had got something in his feet. It went through his shoes, it went to his feet and went into his body. So now he is forever in a wheelchair. That's how bad it is. And so, like they say, in 2012, they had a rat's nest, human waste, hypodermic needles. There's needles down there. You don't want to be stepping in that area. It is extremely dangerous. There's areas of Skid Row extremely violent, and you do not want to be down there. And so, it's unless you know what you're doing and you're supposed to be there and you're equipped to handle the situation. So the city responded by launching Operation Healthy Streets. By since then, homelessness had exploded. So the increasing 40% from 2012, according to the data of the County of Homelessness Services Authority. Many experts blame exorbitant housing costs. Exactly. So the housing in Los Angeles is so expensive that it makes it, even for regular families that are working people, you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can't afford that housing. It used to, 10 years ago, it wasn't even like that. You could at least get into a decent apartment and you could make it. You could make it so that all of the housing is you're going to be out $2,000, $3,000, 4, 5, 6, and ongoing. And they call it luxury high rise or luxury apartments or luxury condos. It's luxury living, but it's really luxury living for people who are wealthy, and not everybody has that kind of money. Even regular working people who they might be doing okay, you're not doing okay when it comes to the rents. So it is extremely um, high. So the median rent for the apartment in Los Angeles is, here they go. I'm almost saying it before I'm reading it. So it's 2,483. And so, which is over 12 months, comes to about an individual median income of 29,301 for the county, according to the data cited by the University of Southern California Center for Social Innovation. And so the rents are ridiculous. It makes it unfair for families that just live, especially don't be under the poverty level, because you will end up, you know, some of these people have been evicted from places because they tried to get apartments and the rents were so high and they just couldn't afford it, and they got evicted, not because they didn't want to pay rent, because they couldn't afford to pay the rent. And so activist General Jeff Page, who lives on Skid Row, fears the city is using the typhus outbreak as an excuse to push out the homeless and make the area more amenable to gentrification, which I could see that happening. And so a lot of it is what I've noticed, what they do in the on the nicer streets of downtown. They police the homeless and push them closer to the Skid Row area. They want to keep them confined to that area and make all the other streets look like there's no homelessness. There's, like it's streets of gold, like nothing happens here. We just wealthy people with a bunch of money to burn. So if you just go a couple of blocks down, then you start seeing the neighborhoods changing, because it's not really telling the truth until you see what's really going on. And this article pretty much points it out. So they could be using the typhus as a scam to rid the sidewalks of people. And so this is what he's saying. And a lot of times they do kind of police the homeless, and it gets out of control. But there's often nowhere for these people to go, is what it's saying. Cities aren't willing to get their rental markets under control. That's true, said Jones of the Inner City Law Center. Okay, so until we build more housing, the squalor on Skid Row will continue, and it grows. And a lot of it is growing too, not because of just people with mental illness and drug issues. You have regular families who just can't afford to pay the rents, and they wind up homeless and they have to find shelter. And some people end up in RVs, or they end up shacking up with people, or they're living in abandoned apartments. If there's any abandoned buildings, they're in this, they kind of stay in there and become squatters. And so that happens a lot in the Hollywood area as well. So we got wet, he said, referring to the overnight rain. Okay, so let me go back up. So back on Sarah's Ave, Steve Jordan, 53 years of age, who said he's been living on the streets for about 2 years, stood next to a tent covered with an American flag themed blanket. So we got wet, he said, referring to the overnight rain, and I have a tent with a hole in it. Please help me, man. So a companion who identified herself as Natasha Armstrong spoke incoherently at times, but she patted her bulbous belly and nodded when asked if she was pregnant. But her fetus, she said, was a rat in her stomach. So that's pretty sad. So I don't know if she meant that that's what she was eating. So I don't know. Her fetus, she said, was a rat in her stomach. I don't get that part. But anyway, it's sad. There are some very sad situations down there. But anyway, I'm going to try to click on this video. I don't know if you can see. Hopefully the rest of this is showing. But I'm going to click on this video, and then I'm going to end this video within the video. but it is really sad. And so this is what I've seen. So I'm going to play it. Let's see if it'll play. It may be short. It may have a commercial, so excuse. So it may take a moment before it actually plays. But like I was saying, it's a lot of tents, a lot of people sleeping on the street, a lot of people, they don't have anywhere to go. And I blame more of the homelessness for people who just can't afford the rents. And so they somehow wind up out there, and it's sad, and it's growing. It's not getting any better. No matter what they tell you, it's getting worse.
There are roughly 500,000 people experiencing homelessness right now in the United States of America. It's an epidemic caused by a host of different things. On this Sunday's Dateline, we go in depth on the political crisis, policy crisis, and a bona fide moral crisis. I'm hosting an hour-long special. It's called City of Angels. We went to LA several times because there's no place in this country where the crisis is worse. Skid Row. Blocks and blocks of tents and tarps right smack in the middle of LA, and it is a national disgrace. How we got here and who's affected might surprise you. Skid Row sits in the shadow of LA's downtown. It is the nation's homeless epicenter. When you see it for the first time, it's a shock to the system, a dystopian nightmare, but one you really need to see to understand the crisis of homelessness. The smell of trash, urine, human excrement is overwhelming. You get used to it? People sleeping on the streets. Do I get used to it? Yeah. Where else are they going to go? Few Angelinos set foot in Skid Row, but Christopher Mack walks these streets every day. Since 2003, he's been a community outreach worker, helping the homeless connect with services and government assistance. We walked with him through Skid Row's 50 square blocks of tarps and tents. People laying on the ground should not be acceptable. It's hard not to get depressed about this, but I've only been there for a day. I know. Stephanie Caskey Gamer is the president, and she's the CEO of LA Family Housing. Stephanie, it's good to see you again. Thanks for your time. One of the things that we talked about when I was out there is how homelessness is in part this manifestation of the affordable housing crisis in this country. Can you explain to our viewers and listeners how the two are connected?
It's really just about supply and demand. If we don't have enough housing for everybody living in Los Angeles at any income level, then when those at our lowest income level are looking for permanent housing, looking for an apartment to rent, with the supply so low, landlords could charge as much as they want. The demand is high. And that just pushes out more and more people who are economically challenged and not able to afford a typical apartment in Los Angeles. That is what has increased our homelessness in the city.
How bad is the shortage there in LA? How many affordable housing units do you need?
Well, here in Los Angeles, we're more than 500,000 units short of meeting the housing for everybody who lives here, not just those who are experiencing homelessness, but those who are on the brink of homelessness.
I talked to one family while I was out there who lost their home despite being employed. Take a listen. When you lost that first apartment, where did you go?
We ended up in our car and moteling it.
And you were still going to work every day?
I was hiding it from everybody. It was hard sometimes trying to sleep with an 18-month-old in the backseat of a car because a lot of my fears and anxiety was leading me to think that if I just die, my family can get life insurance and use that to find a home. That's how bad I felt at the time.
The stigma of homelessness, how does that stigma affect those who need help?
I think, like Priscilla and Ryan, there's so many people who are economically homeless. they're working, but they can't afford a typical apartment, and letting their coworkers and letting their peers and letting their family know that they need help has become a challenge. And LA Family Housing understands that it's our responsibility to find those people, to be sure they know how to access services so that we can help them get back on their feet and move into their own home.
Stephanie Kasky-Gamer, President and CEO of LA Family Housing. Stephanie also features prominently in the piece as one of those folks who's working to find the solution to this crisis. Stephanie, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. And do be sure to watch City of Angels, Dateline, Sunday, 7 o'clock Eastern, only on NBC.
So that's pretty much that video, and it's really sad. And I thought this was really an important message to get out. I know some people say, oh, we already know about this, but some people don't know. And for those that don't know, it really has gotten worse. And I don't think it's going to get any better because of how callous people have become. Every work as a judge or a doctor or a lawyer. Everybody doesn't work for a Fortune 500 company. Everybody is not invested in the stock market. Everybody does not have, or each person doesn't always have the same income as the next in order to secure a safe, comfortable, and decent livable housing. So some people are economically challenged in some ways. They may be working people, but they don't make a lot of money. And some people are trying, and sometimes there are some people who are discriminated and they can't reach levels or heights where they can accumulate or make more money so that they can live in this competing market, which is heavily gentrified, I would say, especially in the LA area. And so those places downtown are just really way far too expensive. Even the cheapest places are almost at $2,000. And so, and that's not considered cheap for someone that is on a fixed income, or either they don't really make that much money, even though they're working people and working families. And so that is what puts some people out on the street as well. So everybody is not with mental, all the homeless is not just mental issues and drug issues. There are some regular families, people who, you know, they work, or there's one income earner, and they just don't make a lot of money, you know. So it's an unfortunate situation. And this is the problem that we're having in the LA area. And it's not just LA that's having it, it's LA County, and it's spreading. And with that, with homeless people, what happens when people are out on the street? These are people of all walks of life, genders, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, all kinds of people, families now. It used to not be families now. It's the growing population of homeless is women and families and children that are out there, and teens. Even you also have college students. Believe it or not, there are some students that are using their cars as a place to sleep, because sometimes there are some people who can't afford the rents or the apartments, or the places that they have. It's just not accessible in terms of finances. So with that being said, I'm going to let this video go. It's just a sad situation. It seems to not really get any better. And the only solution, I believe, or it wouldn't be just the only solution, but one solution outside of some of the other methods that they're using to try to clean up and alleviate some of the issues on the street, is to make rent affordable for people who are on fixed incomes or limited incomes, and make affordable housing, places where people can actually pay the rent and and pay their bills and be able to take it with their families without having to succumb to homelessness and possible, you know, possible death, you know, from being exposed to these diseases and what have you. Well, with that being said, I'm going to also add one other thing before I go. There's a crisis that is happening with migrant people who are coming here from other countries, Guatemala, Honduras, and that's a big problem. And this is why I said that Los Angeles, Pasadena, Long Beach, LA County, and outside of California, people have all around been talking about how they don't get paid as much. We've heard issues with teachers not getting paid as much. We've heard issues with people just, regular families being pushed out and having to be displaced or ending up homeless. These are people who are here in America already that are struggling. And what I'm wondering is, I did see where they said they were deploying troops and what have you, but to leave poverty and come to what? More poverty is what I say it's going to be. It would just increase the homeless population if more people came here with poverty. And you have people that are right here. Some of those people you're looking at are American citizens and they can't afford the rents. And so if you have people coming from different countries and they have poverty, it just increases the homeless population. That's what I'm seeing happening. I think the grim reality of all of it is that there's going to be probably more homeless people, more violence, probably more gang violence because they're going to prey upon homeless people who have drug issues. There's also probably going to be more families with kids that are going to be homeless if any of the people from the other regions make it here. And then what would end up happening, there'd be probably a large number of people who would end up in detention centers if they were apprehended by ICE or something like that. And it would just create more of a whirlwind of trouble. And it's sad, but this seems like the way things are headed. It doesn't seem to get any better. So with that being said, I'm going to let this video go. It just seems like before you see any light in the tunnel, there is none. It just seems to fester. And I believe there have been a couple of articles that have come out about the rising rents. There's been some articles, lots of articles, but there's been also some articles about the housing market as well. So if they change that and make it accessible for people like families and people who are on lower fixed incomes or just, living paycheck to paycheck, if they make things a little more affordable, that could quell some of this homelessness from regular families that just don't make a lot of money, So anyway, without further ado, I bid you a good night and thank you for listening. Thoughts, comments, feedback, subscribe. Take care.